Sometimes, the people we overlook are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens, and the ones who end up teaching us the most about humanity. When a powerful CEO decides to uncover a janitor's secret, she has no idea the truth will not only change her company but her heart forever. Stay till the end, because what she discovers on that Friday will leave you speechless. Every Friday evening, while the entire office buzzed with energy, laughter, and late-night meetings, one man quietly vanished from sight. His name was Thomas Gray, a janitor in his mid-50s with tired eyes and hands that spoke of decades of hard labor. No one knew much about him. He came before sunrise, cleaned silently, nodded politely to everyone, and always disappeared before the clock hit 5 p.m. sharp every Friday. To most employees, Thomas was invisible. Just another background figure blending into the corporate walls. But Olivia Kent, the 38-year-old CEO of Kent Global Industries, wasn't like most people. She'd built her empire from scratch, known for being observant, analytical, and, some said, ruthless. Nothing escaped her sharp eyes. For weeks, she noticed Thomas's unusual pattern. Every Friday, no matter what, he would leave 2 hours early. He never asked for permission. He didn't clock out late to make up for it. Yet, no one said anything because he was just the janitor. But Olivia was different. Something about his quiet consistency, his bowed head, and his gentle greetings made her curious. Why would a man like that risk his job every Friday? At first, she tried to ignore it. But when her head of HR mentioned cutting costs and possibly replacing the older cleaning staff, something in Olivia's gut said, "Not yet. There's more to this man." That Friday, instead of heading home, Olivia decided to follow him. She didn't tell her assistant or driver. She slipped into her car alone, pulling her hair into a ponytail and removing her business jacket so she wouldn't stand out. At 4:58 p.m., she watched from the parking lot as Thomas stepped out of the building, wearing his faded blue uniform, carrying a brown paper bag. His old sedan coughed to life, and he drove off quietly. Olivia followed from a distance. He didn't go to a bar. He didn't go shopping. He didn't even stop for food. He drove across town into a part of the city most of her employees would never dare visit. Broken streetlights. Old buildings. Cracked sidewalks. The kind of place success stories rarely come from. Finally, he stopped in front of a small, crumbling community center. The sign above it read St. Helena's Home for Children. Olivia frowned. A children's home? She watched as Thomas got out of his car and carried the paper bag inside. A few minutes later, she followed him quietly, peeking through a side window. What she saw made her throat tighten. Inside the dimly lit hall, Thomas was surrounded by children, maybe 20 of them, ranging from toddlers to teenagers. They rushed toward him, laughing, shouting, hugging his legs. His face lit up with a warmth Olivia had never seen in the office. The man who was invisible all week suddenly became someone's hero. He unpacked the paper bag, sandwiches, apples, juice boxes, and small notebooks. He served the children patiently, kneeling beside them, smiling as they talked about school, life, and dreams. Later, he took out an old guitar and began singing. His voice was rough but filled with emotion. The children clapped and sang with him. It wasn't just a visit, it was family. Olivia stood frozen outside, her heart heavy. She had spent her life building companies, profits, and prestige. But this man, who had none of those things, seemed infinitely richer in spirit. That night, when she finally returned to her penthouse, her mind wouldn't rest. She thought about Thomas's gentle laughter, the way the children looked at him like he was the only person who truly saw them. The next day, she quietly asked HR to pull up Thomas Gray's file. What she found deepened the mystery. Employee since 2012. Widowed. No disciplinary record. Address, unknown, listed as temporary housing. Temporary housing? Her janitor was homeless. That realization hit her like thunder. She stared at the screen, her reflection merging with his photo. In all her board meetings, she had spoken about leadership, compassion, and social responsibility, but when had she last lived it? The next Friday, Olivia followed him again. This time, she went inside. When Thomas saw her, he froze mid-step. The children stared at the stranger in heels and a tailored coat. "Miss Kent," he stammered. "What are you?" "I was curious," she said softly, holding out a box of food she'd brought. "I wanted to help." Thomas looked at her, unsure. Then, with a trembling smile, he nodded. That evening, Olivia helped serve dinner, read stories to the kids, and learned their names. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a CEO, she felt human. But as the night ended, she noticed something she hadn't before. Thomas's hands shook when he packed up the guitar. He winced slightly as he lifted the food trays. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "Just an old injury, ma'am. Nothing to worry about." But Olivia wasn't convinced. When she left that night, she made a silent promise to find out what was really going on. And what she discovered next would change everything. The following Monday, Olivia couldn't focus on her meetings. The image of Thomas wincing in pain haunted her. She called her private investigator, someone she used for corporate matters, and asked him to look into Thomas Gray's background. 2 days later, she got the report. Thomas was a war veteran. He'd served in the army for over 20 years, honorably discharged after an explosion in the field left him partially disabled. He'd lost his wife, Eleanor, to cancer shortly after returning home. With no family left, he'd started volunteering at the orphanage where his wife used to work, St. Helena's. When the funding for the orphanage was cut, he used half his small janitor's salary to feed the children. Every Friday, he'd go there not because he was leaving early to rest, but because those kids depended on him for food, comfort, and love. Olivia read the file with tears welling in her eyes. She'd spent her life surrounded by luxury, power, and people who wore masks. Yet the most selfless person she'd ever met mopped her floors for minimum wage. That Friday, she didn't follow him secretly. She went openly, with boxes of food, clothes, books, and toys. When she arrived, the children screamed with joy. Thomas turned, surprised, as she entered carrying supplies. "I couldn't let you do this alone," she said softly. He smiled, his eyes glistening. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she replied. "You've been helping these children for years without anyone knowing. It's time someone helped you." Together, they spent the evening rebuilding shelves, painting walls, serving meals. Olivia found herself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in years. But then, something unexpected happened. As she was helping a young boy with his homework, Thomas suddenly collapsed. The guitar fell from his hands, and chaos erupted. Olivia rushed to his side, holding his head in her arms as someone called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor explained quietly, he's been working with an untreated heart condition for months. He never came for checkups. He was too busy taking care of others. Olivia sat beside his bed that night, gripping his hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. "You can't leave them," she whispered. "They need you." "I need you." Thomas smiled weakly. "Promise me one thing," he said. "Keep this place alive. For them." "I promise," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. He closed his eyes, whispering, "Thank you for seeing me." Thomas passed away that night quietly, peacefully, leaving behind a legacy of love that no one had known existed. Olivia kept her promise. She founded the Gray Foundation for Children, in his honor, turning St. Helena's into a fully funded, modern home for hundreds of orphans. She even included a photo of Thomas with the kids on the wall, under the words, "True wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by how much you give." Every Friday, Olivia still visits the home. She plays the same old guitar Thomas once held and sings to the children who now call her Aunt Olivia. And each time, she remembers the janitor who taught her that kindness is the greatest form of leadership and that sometimes, the people who seem to have the least end up giving the most.